Minister, we now move to the Labour Party. Deputy Aodhán or Ríordáin. 10 minutes.
And thank you, Minister, for being here. Minister, I have to say and concur with others that I haven't been impressed with the level of communication from your department and members of this Oireachtas. I wrote to you on the 12th of March suggesting a collegiate, collaborative partnership approach across this chamber. We've had one meeting in the last 6 weeks on the 1st of April. You've spoken a lot about the advisory group. Put a lot of stock in that. My understanding is that you haven't attended one of these advisory group meetings with various stakeholders. You got support across the chamber on the oral exams. You got political backing on the postponement of the Leaving Cert. Yet, almost every single issue coming out from the Department of Education has been mishandled. Now, it reminds me of what was said to me once by a leading trade union official, that the Department of Education understands two things: teachers and buildings. And if it's not a teacher and it's not a building, it doesn't understand how to deal with it. Now, you said here on the floor of the House that the Leaving Cert is starting on the 29th of July. I want you to be in a position to confirm that date, because what you say and how you say it and how your department says things has a massive implication on the mental health of young people who are sitting these exams. It's a thumbscrew. It's an absolute thumbscrew. So it's not good enough for somebody in your position to say, well, it might be in July, it might be in August, for something to appear in the Irish Times that it might go on until September. The Taoiseach comes in here last week and says, well, the universities mightn't open until November. And every young person who's sitting these exams hears all these things and wonders, when is somebody going to make a decision? And not only that, but you're going to charge them €116 for the privilege. I'm stunned that you stood up here and said that the best you can do is to postpone the date of the fee. Waive the fee. Waive it. You shouldn't be asking students to pay €116 for the privilege of sitting this Leaving Cert this year, particularly considering the type of situation that the majority of families in this country are going through. So I think you would get cross-party support and plaudits if you were to stand up right here, right now and say, let's forget about the fee for this year. Because there is an argument that it shouldn't actually be charged at all in a country that values the concept of free education. On the special needs assistance, I have to say, Minister, in your reply, you're thankful for their contribution to the national effort. I have to say, part of me thinks that SNAs are owed an apology from your department at the manner in which that redeployment was completely mishandled. And yet again, last week, there's a communication to our special needs assessments, not from you, not from your department, from the HSE. And potentially some of the redeployment measures that they may be engaging in will be done in HSE premises. And also there's a suggestion of a 12-week contract which goes right through the summer. And what special needs assistants are wondering and worried about is, are they going to absolutely stay in the educational sphere? And how come it has taken so long for this clarity to arrive? And I have to say, hand on heart, that the department would not deal with the teaching body in that way, would not deal with any other public servant in that manner. And I'm quite sure the consultants are not getting dealt with in that manner. So I'd like to refer to that as well, Minister. I appreciate you've referenced the issue of renter funds and the Minister and the University of Limerick. On primary school speculation, and this wasn't your fault, Minister, but it's not good enough for a Minister of the Government to wonder aloud in a Sunday Independent interview about schools coming back in June, because every teacher in the country begins to wonder what's happening in June. Surely if a minister is saying this out loud in an interview, there's something behind it. And then every teacher begins to worry about childcare, and every parent begins to wonder if they can justifiably send their children back in June. Is this really happening? Or is this something that just the minister said off the top of their head? Now, I appreciate these are trying times. Nobody is in here genuinely trying to score points, but we've been doing our best to back you for the last 6 weeks. And what we get in our email tray and our communications from around the country is a huge number of exasperated parents and students. So it's not good enough for a Minister of Government to come out and suggest that 1 day a week, half a day in June is going to happen. I want to ask you a direct question about students who have received SUSI, VITAS, BTEI grants who are not able to complete their courses. Could you address that, Minister, please? And finally, Minister, I would just say, just in relation to the Leaving Cert, is there a plan B? Now, I appreciate none of us in this House look at your situation and feel that any of this is your any of this is your fault. That you were handed this situation, the pandemic arrived, and you've done, in fairness, in terms of your oral examinations and in terms of the postponement of Leaving Cert, it was the best worst option that you've chosen, and you've gotten political support in that. And nobody in the political system has actually pulled you up on that or scored a point against you in relation to that. But there has to be a huge amount more transparency on this issue. Because everything that comes out of your mouth is listened to by, as I said, every student, every teacher in the country. And it is justifiable criticism.
Thank you, Deputy.
That it was a forum online on Tuesday that you decided to give us the July 29th date. That date should have been announced in this forum, in this House, or in a forum that everybody in the country is familiar with or feels that they can have some over and back with you with. So I know I've raised a lot of issues with you, Minister, but I want you to address the timetable.
3 minutes for
I want you to reference the fee, please, in your answer, and also the other issues I've raised in terms of special needs assistance and other issues. Go on.
Thank you, Yonta. Antara.
Okay, thank the Deputy for raising a number of issues there. Let's be very clear in the date. You're correct in saying in a public forum on Tuesday night, what I said exactly was that the provisional date that we were looking at was the 29th of July. And I said I would confirm that in a couple of days. This is the couple of days, so I'm confirming in the House tonight, 29th of July is the start date. The timetabling, which is a really, really important question that you asked, the sequence of timetabling now, to try to work through the uncertainty which will continue to be there in terms of wider uncertainties. The first week in June will be the time after the work of the advisory group is completed and working with the State Examination Commission. That will be the date to let students know in advance of the 29th of July how the format and how the timetable will look then. So that is the sequence of events. I do take your point in terms of the uncertainty and lack of clarity. But look, that is the world we're working within. And if I knew, and if there's so many unknowns in terms of where we're going to be, and if there's better ways of communicating message, certainly if there's a better way of communicating to you in this House from my department in a more efficient way, I will ask my officials to do that. But we have to have a complete understanding of how this disruption hasn't just affected wider society at a general level and the movement of people. 1,300 staff members between Marlborough Street, Athlone and Tullamore had to completely change their way of working. They're working remotely. They're trying to comply with they're complying with the social distancing ruling and all that. And there is a bombardment of issues, whether it's school meals, whether it's SNA redeployment. So the world continues to go on within the department, and it is a disruption. But I will take back, and I certainly will take back, Deputy, your issue that you raised in terms of communicating messages back in a more efficient manner. You also talked about the SNA. Look, I want to acknowledge Forza Union. Forza Trade Union sat down with officials and they worked hard in advance of coming up with this formalised redeployment plan. And within that plan was to ensure that SNAs could formally continue with the work that they were already doing. A lot of SNAs, from day one of school closure, continued to engage with their own students, be it at primary school level or Leaving Cert level. So there has been an engagement. There has been, yes, correct, there has been confusion on this matter as well. But as of now, there's been engagement, and Forsa and the department officials have agreed that there will be a training element to this, which will involve the HSE, but that's just a training element, and that may involve some of the training taking place for some of the SNAs on in particular HSE buildings or community care settings. But that's a training. This is going to be remote work. This is going to be remote work for the SNAs, not working in any other capacity that is not within the agreement between Forsa and my officials. Your issue around schools opening, schools will not open unless it's safe for them to do so. Schools will not open unless it's safe for them to do so. And on the school fees, I've said here this evening already, I'm engaging with my officials on this issue. We have changed the date for payment till after the exams, but I'm going to continue that conversation. And I know you've raised it publicly with me before, and I'm certainly listening here this evening as well.
Thank you, Minister.
And